Hello, welcome to Lessons On with yours truly, Nomfanelo, where this is all about writing an active monologue for film and TV. So with this one, we'll be focusing on subtext, which I call it, may the subtext be with you. So just before I start, just make sure you've watched the previous videos before you saying this one. So let's get to it. So subtext, it's a literal or literary, technique that's used to convey thoughts, feelings, and ideas without overtly stating them. So essentially, it's like reading between the lines. It's like the hidden message that's underneath the dialogue, essentially. So, and the audience would either know what the characters are saying or has information that some of the characters don't have. So, why use subtext? Well, use it because you could to conceal the truth from the other characters. You could create tension. It adds an extra layer of complexity to the scene and characters. And most importantly, it avoids on-the-nose explanations, which could make it dull for the audience, but there is exceptions. So with going back to Taken, Brian's monologue, so it's very direct and literal with what he's saying. So essentially, he's like a straight shooter. So when it comes to monologues like that, like it's fine to be literal. But going back to character, like when regards to relationship between the speaker and the listener, it's something to consider when it comes to writing the dialogue. So if let's say like if it's someone they know, like a friend, or maybe let's say they betrayed a friend or something, so they might not be too like literal in terms of their delivery depending on how they feel, or they could be in some cases. So just like when it comes to like literal dialogue, maybe use it less, like unless if it's something, let's say that they want to be direct, like when in terms of giving a demand, maybe the character has reached their breaking point and they just want to tell you straight out like how the deal is going to go, sort of deal. So, and yeah, also too, like I think subtext, yeah, like is helpful because it does establish like a mood, like it increases the stakes because you don't know where things are going to go. So going back to Silva's monologue, like he's not direct. Sorry, I should go back here. So he's not direct with what he tries to say. Like he uses a lot of metaphors with the rats and the coconut ideology. So let's just dive into his monologue. So I'm not going to look at to watch the video for copyright reasons, but I do have the screenplay. So here, let's dive into it. So here's how it starts. So interior, main hall / computer room, day. Bond sitting, his hands are still tied. So essentially here, it's just a description of the setting and what Bond is doing because he's trying to survey the room. And then the elevator appears, which reveals to be Raul Silva. Because interesting, they describe him here as he is a physically commanding and a handsome man of Bond's years. I don't know, like in terms of the movie, if he's like physically commanding per se. I think maybe because of the suit that he wears, like the cream colored suit and the pants, maybe like it's because of that. But I think he is commanding in other ways than just physicality. So let's just dive into it, where he says, "Hello, James. Welcome. Do you like the island? My grandmother had an island. Nothing to boast of. You could walk around it in an hour. Still, it was a paradise for us." So it's interesting here that when he says, "Oh, nothing to boast of." So it's like clearly he wants to brag about the island, but at the same time, he doesn't want to appear that he's bragging about the island. So it kind of displays his arrogance. And he previously, other characters like Severine have mentioned, yeah, that he is intimidating. And he's also greedy too. And then so as he is delivering the monologue, he's walking slowly towards Bond. "And one summer, we went for a visit and discovered the place has been infested with rats." And it's interesting with rats, that's underlined, so to specify rats. So rats is essentially here used as a metaphor for the agents. "They come here on a fishing boat and gorge themselves on coconut. So how do you get rats off an island? My grandmother showed me." And then he's inching closer. So when he says that the place has been infested with rats, so it's really an like analogy in terms of his experience in when he was in MI6. So let's just go back to the slide, like I mentioned. So the island is really symbolizes England or the UK. So, sorry. And then, all right. And then he inches closer. "We buried an oil drum and hinged the lid. Then we wired coconut to the lid as bait, and the rats would come for the coconut. Boing, 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 boing. They would fall into the drum. And after a month, you've trapped all the rats. But what do you do then? Throw the drum into the ocean? Burn it? No, you just leave it. And they begin to get hungry. And one by one, they start eating each other until there are only two left, the two survivors. And then what? Do you kill them? No. You take them and release them into the trees. And now they don't eat coconut anymore. Now they only eat rat. You have changed your nature." Now he's toe-to-toe. Bond studies Bond's face minutely. "The two survivors, this is what she made us." So it's very compelling monologue. And it's interesting with the certain phrases are underlined because they clearly have significance. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. Sorry, my screen is frozen. So my screen is frozen. Sorry, I'm just trying to. All right, apologies for that. So essentially with the monologue here, it's very evident he sees himself and Bond as brothers competing for M's love. So he wants to use Bondo to destroy M, but knows in the back of his mind that he will most likely refuse simply because of his devotion to M and his patriotism to his country, England. So clearly it displays his arrogance, but tries to downplay it as much as possible. Like when he says, "Oh, nothing to boast about," when he's talking about the island, even though he clearly wants to boast about it. And when it comes to the rats, in terms of how they're eating the coconut and then they eventually eat each other, it's a really gruesome description of to show how Silva himself survived when he was an agent. So going back to symbolism and the metaphors, so the island represents England. Grandma, when he says, oh, my grandma, when he's like, my grandma, you know, and I lived in the island, so forth, that represents M. The rats symbolize the agents. So in this context, it will be Bond and Silva. That's why he says we're the last two survivors standing, meaning the rats. So the coconut refers to the bait, because going back, so with his backstory is that he was one of the top MI6 agents at the time, but then he decided to hack into the Chinese government to steal some files, top secret files, which is a big no-no, because that resulted in his capture and then eventual torture. And he is upset that how that situation went, even though he knew it's wrong, but obviously as a villain, he doesn't believe what he did was wrong. And when it comes to eating each other in terms of the rats, that means to kill. So, like I said, compelling monologue, and highly recommend you guys watch the film if you have not seen it at this point. So, in terms of tips, it's helpful to know the character inside and out. Don't allow the character to reveal the truth right away. So going back to Silva's monologue, he uses a lot of metaphors and symbolism to reveal the truth, not directly, but indirectly. Because I find it was interesting if you go towards the end when Silva dies, how Bond says, oh, the last rat standing. He says something like that, which goes back to this monologue. Interesting. And use visuals, because since this is a monologue for film and TV, it's helpful to use visuals of the character's reaction. So with this case of Silva's monologue, it's like a one-shot take of him coming towards Bond as he's delivering the monologue. So I think, yeah, if you want to do that, that's fine. But if you want to show other people's reactions, like, don't be afraid to use descriptions, just as long as they're not too chunky. Like, don't go too overboard with the descriptions. And lastly, too, like, try to incorporate silence in a dialogue. For you can add dramatic effects, so either with the pauses, the beats, or the movements, depending on like the genre. So if it's a comedy, you might use less than that, unless if you want to indicate the other characters' reactions. But usually for dramas or something that's more serious, don't be afraid to use those. So that concludes part 4. And next video, part 5, which will be the last one for this series, which we'll be talking about editing and what to do with the monologue. So thank you guys for watching this video. So links for the monologue and for the script will be in the description. And you could check out link for my socials, which will be in the description. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below and I'd be happy to answer them. And I'll see you guys on the next one.